We want to talk about the feedback part of creating designs and drawings. Just like, well, in any process, let's say manufacturing. You manufacture a part, it's probably good, but you don't know until you do some kind of checking, inspection, quality control process. That's true of every process, including making drawings. So to close the loop, you need a feedback step. And in some companies that are large enough, there is a specific job, which is the checker. In other companies, it might be, it might be your supervisor who does the checking. It might be another colleague who does the checking. In a big company, this is one step on the career path. And I just want to point out, while we're thinking about career path, when you are hired as a drafter, don't be afraid to start at the bottom rung of the ladder. This is how we get our feet in the door and make progress. And there are some cases where maybe you're not even hired as a drafter. Maybe you're hired as a document control person or an engineering clerk. But gradually you work your way into junior drafter, and so on and so forth, working your way up to senior designer. Some companies have the title of engineer without a full engineering degree. Well, one of these steps in this pathway is checker. And in the checking process, if you should get to the point where you are doing this as your job, this is a very detail-oriented, methodical process. Some people like it and are designed for it, and some people don't. So you just have to find out if that's you. It requires a lot of attention to detail. And as a checker, you are going to be checking two things. The drafting skills, does this follow the drafting standards that we know about? And then the design itself, does this thing work? Are there any mistakes in it? And typically, whoever is doing the checking, whether it's you as a senior drafter or a designer, or maybe one of your colleagues or a supervisor, whoever's doing it typically uses a hard copy of the drawing with a red pen. And this is why we call some drawings red lines. When you start at a new job, usually the first tasks you will be given is correcting red lines. So you'll get a drawing like this. Well, this happens to be electronics. You might get some other kind of drawing, but it'll have red lines on it. And your task is to go into CAD or the other software and correct the drawing. This is a great way to get familiar with what product that company builds or makes. As a checker, if you are doing the checking, in the drafting process, you are looking at, have they followed the rules that we know about dimensioning and tolerancing standards? Have they followed the standards of this particular office? Now, every company has its own set of standards, and most manufacturing companies will follow the ASME standard pretty much, but each one will have some particular variations. Is the drawing complete? So was anything left out? And conversely, are there any duplicate dimensions? And then what about the bill of material? Are the quantities correct? Are the part numbers correct? And sometimes that bill of material audit is even done as a separate step. So that's the drafting. Then for checking the design, you'll want to get out your calculator and see, does the math all add up? Is the geometry, the angles and so forth all correct? What about the tolerances? Are there any tolerance stack-ups that maybe your drafter didn't catch? Are there any places where things might interfere? And here's where a software like SolidWorks comes in very handy. It will do interference checks in the software for you. And then how about the function? Does this part or assembly function as designed? And then there may be some calculations that you or someone will need to check. That isn't always the case, but sometimes maybe your supervisor will do engineering checks. What about the strength calculations? Now, how do you manage all this data without missing something yourself as the checker? Well, some people who work as checkers make checklists for themselves. And you might just want to make a list of all the things that you want to be sure to check for. I've tried that, and just for me personally, I find it doesn't work so well for me. Maybe it'll work for you. On the other hand, if you're just out there free-forming it, you're going to miss things. So you kind of have to develop your own system. Now let's think about, what if you are the drafter and you get a red line from your employer, and now you need to do the revisions to that red line. I want to tell you that every year when we meet with local employers who hire drafters, they always mention this idea about red lines and about wanting drafters to be methodical. So from this we conclude this is really important. What they want is you to be able to pay attention to detail and be methodical and not miss anything. So how the heck do you do that? Okay, you've got this red line drawing in front of you. You run your eyes over it. You start changing things. Probably you're done, or are you? Here's what you do. In order to be sure, what a drafter does is take a highlighter. So you've got a hard copy red line. You take a highlighter. Some people use yellow, some people use green. And as you make a change in your CAD drawing, you mark that red line with the highlighter on your drawing. And when you are done, or when you think you are done, you run your eyes over the entire red line drawing, and you see, are there any red marks which do not have highlighter on them? That is the only way I know of to be certain that you have done everything. So I recommend you follow this process. Most drafters do this, and your employers will be grateful.